Ever been to a cosplay convention? Well, if not, check out today's preview of the new Prince of Persia movie to find out what it's like.
Hey, you got Castlevania and my Soul Calibur. I don't understand how or why you did that, but join in my confusion in today's review of Castlevania Judgment for the Wii.
What happens when a history buff makes a game? Find out in our preview of Empire Total War.
And Samuel L. Jackson as a samurai. Enough said. Check it out in today's review of Afro Samurai.
So put down your crochet needle and meat cleaver.
Because it's time for Game Over!
Welcome to Game Over, ICTV's home for geek culture. I'm Colin DeMattis, now available on UMD and Betamax.
And I'm Giovanni Colantonio, now available on Blu-ray and Laserdisc. Now let's kick today's show off with our first review. Now, when it comes to third-party support, the Wii has always gotten the short end of the stick. Well, actually, Wii has actually gotten shafted more in first-party support recently, but I don't really have time to review Wii music again. But I digress. It's not that third parties don't want to develop for the Wii. In fact, the system probably has more third-party titles available for it than the PlayStation 3 has games, period. But when it comes time for companies to translate their biggest franchises to Nintendo's golden child, developers seem to sharpen their biggest butchering blade. I mean, take Soul Calibur, for example. While PS3 and Xbox 360 owners were beating one another to death with Darth Vader in Soul Calibur 4, Wii owners were aimlessly shaking their arms around some shoddy adventure game.
Well, Namco and Konami must be playing some unfunny, rude joke, because now Wii owners have finally gotten the fighting game they yearn for, in the form of Castlevania Judgment. That's right, the latest installment in the classic Castlevania series is a weapon-based fighter. But what's even more puzzling is the fact that it actually isn't as bad as that sounds. Judgment is basically your standard arcade-style fighting. You choose a game mode, a character, and then beat the crap out of different enemies until you've won. By no means anything new, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. After all, this is probably the first decent fighting game for the Wii since Wii Boxing.
Now, one of the game's main strength really lies in its art direction and style. The developers do a great job at seamlessly infusing the feeling of Castlevania into a fighting game. The stages are particularly noteworthy, presenting a dark, moody arenas that go beyond your basic fighting space. For example, battling on a pirate ship is fun, but doing this while being attacked by a giant kraken is pretty sweet.
Also notable is the game's castle mode. In this, you choose a character and go from door to door, completing specific challenges. Doing this allows you to unlock certain pieces of gear, which you can customize your characters with. It's actually a fun mode that really breaks away from the dullness of the standard Beat 10 fighter style. But as fun as this mode is, it leaves an important question. Why didn't the developers just make a real Castlevania game? Whipping enemies senseless is nice and all, but it just leaves you hungry for an epic vampire-slaying quest.
Now, despite all the game's positive aspects, the game's setback comes in its core gameplay. Specifically, the game suffers from an unbalanced character roster, antagonistic camera work, and clunky motion controls. Because of this, the gameplay can get pretty frustrating and tiresome pretty quickly. You'll frequently find yourself swearing at your foes for being unhittable, swearing at the camera for hiding behind your foes, and yourself for being severely out of shape.
All in all, Castlevania Judgment is a solid rent. Sure, it's nearly an inferior carbon copy of Soul Calibur, but there's enough fresh content here to provide some quick satisfaction. For Wii owners desperate for a good fighting game, you may want to consider buying it, but you also might want to consider selling your Wii altogether and investing in Xbox 360 and a copy of Soul Calibur 4.
And with that out of the way, let's toss it over to the man of the hour, Greg Schultz, with a look into the world of fine cinema.
Thanks, Giovanni. It's true, I am Greg Schultz, and this is today's movie preview. The recent release of the latest Prince of Persia game, Ubisoft's fourth title in the series since The Sands of Time in 2003, brings to mind the upcoming Sands of Time movie that's due for the release in May of 2010. Fans of the game have been following the buzz since 2004 when producer Jerry Bruckheimer expressed the desire to get the rights for a film from Jordan Mechner, the creator of the Prince of Persia video games. Die-hard fans of the original game might be discouraged to find out Ubisoft has no involvement whatsoever with the film, which Walt Disney Pictures now holds the rights to, although Mechner himself did have a hand in creating the script based on the franchise. The long-awaited action-adventure film aims to follow in the footsteps of such epics as Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Mask of Zorro, although Mechner has cautioned fans not to expect the film adaptation to stay true to the game. Directed by Mike Newell, the director of Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, the film boasts a familiar cast starring, yes, you guessed it, Jake Gyllenhaal. While we've already made a few cracks at Pretty Boy Jake, he's sure been shaping up, putting on 5 pounds of muscle, plus some muscle implants to play the previously nameless Prince Dastan. Gemma Arterton, seen in Quantum of Solace late last year, has been cast opposite Gyllenhaal as the spirited Princess Tamina, who fans of the game might know better as Farah. The site confirms that Alfred Molina will be playing Sheikh Amar, the prince's mentor, while Ben Kingsley has been cast as the treacherous Nizam. We haven't seen any trailers yet, but the unofficial movie site, Persia.moviechronicles.com, has kept followers updated with cast pictures and current production footage. An interview with Gyllenhaal reveals the film has been shot in the sprawling Moroccan desert, as well as the elaborate sets in England, and includes a few clips of action-packed fighting and a chase scene on horseback. While the choice of Gyllenhaal for the prince seems to be a disappointment for many who were hoping the film might bring some new actors into the spotlight, we're actually optimistic about the upcoming film, judging from those exciting video clips. Besides, with Bruckheimer on board, who many expect will take the franchise on the same path as Pirates of the Caribbean, you just can't lose. And now we're going to head back to Colin for today's trivia.
Thanks, Greg, you lovable dreamboat. It's time for our first break, but don't fret, it's time for today's quiz as well. Today's question is, in The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask for the Nintendo 64, what alternate dimension does Link find himself in? Is it A, Clockton, B, Termina, C, Hyrule, or D, Zoranopolis? The answer when we return.